Captain Jennifer Hayes stood at the bridge of the TNS Hyperion, her hands clasped behind her back as she watched the holographic display come to life. The Xixxtheri fleet stretched before them, their crystalline ships refracting starlight like deadly prisms in the void. Each vessel was a masterpiece of alien engineering, their quantum-powered weapons preparing to rain destruction upon Rigel Prime below. "Status report," she commanded, her voice steady, despite the weight of humanity's first interstellar intervention resting on her shoulders. Lieutenant Commander Mike Rodriguez's fingers danced across his tactical console. 15 capital ships, Captain. Their energy signatures are off the charts. Those crystals aren't just for show. They're focusing quantum energies in ways our scientists thought impossible. Yet here we are, Hayes responded, a slight smile playing at the corners of her mouth. Ready to prove that impossible is just another word for hasn't met humanity yet. The bridge crew worked with practiced efficiency, each movement precise and purposeful. They were the best Earth had to offer, chosen not just for their skills, but for their ability to think outside conventional boundaries. As the Hyperion's systems came fully online, the alien fleet finally seemed to notice their arrival. A transmission cut through their communications, the translated alien voice dripping with disdain. "Unidentified vessel, you have entered a restricted military operation. Your design suggests primitive origin. Withdraw immediately, or be destroyed with the rest of this system's defenders." Hayes nodded to Communications Officer Lisa Martinez, who opened a channel. "This is Captain Jennifer Hayes of the Terran naval ship Hyperion. We are responding to a distress call from our Rigelian allies. I suggest you reconsider your position in this system." Laughter, or something approximating it, crackled through the speakers. "Your vessel appears to lack even basic quantum shielding. Your hull is composed of simple alloys. What possible threat could you pose to the Dominion?" "Chief Engineer Thompson," Hayes called out, "are our systems operating within expected parameters?" Ashley Thompson's voice carried from her engineering station, filled with controlled excitement. "All systems nominal, Captain. Our simple alloys are playing their part perfectly. They're reading exactly what we want them to read." The Xixxtheri fleet's formation was perfect, too perfect. Hayes had studied their tactics extensively during their journey to Rigel. The aliens relied on quantum technology for everything, from weapons to sensors to fleet coordination. Their rigid adherence to geometric precision in battle formations wasn't just doctrine. It was a requirement for their quantum-linked targeting systems. "Mr. Rodriguez, do we have targeting solutions for Operation Trojan Horse?" "Aye, Captain. All railguns charged and ready. Missile tubes loaded with our special packages. Electronic warfare suites standing by." Hayes took a moment to survey her crew. Humans had dreamed of this moment for centuries, first contact with an alien civilization. But humanity's dreams had always been tempered by nightmares, preparing for the worst even as they hoped for the best. The Hyperion represented those preparations, a perfect fusion of humanity's paranoia and ingenuity. "The Xixxtheri are about to learn something important about humanity," Hayes announced to her crew. "We don't need quantum tech to be deadly. Sometimes a rock thrown hard enough is more effective than the most sophisticated energy weapon. Tactical, you may fire when ready." The Hyperion's railguns roared to life, launching tungsten rods at relativistic speeds. The Xixxtheri's quantum shields, designed to disperse energy weapons, might as well have been tissue paper against solid projectiles moving at significant fractions of light speed. Their perfect formation became their weakness as the rods tore through multiple ships aligned in their precise geometric patterns. Chaos erupted across the battlefield as the alien fleet attempted to adapt to this primitive yet devastating attack. Their quantum sensors, calibrated for energy weapons and shield harmonics, struggled to track simple kinetic projectiles. "Launch electronic warfare package," Hayes ordered, watching as the next phase of their attack began. The Xixxtheri were about to discover that humanity's primitive radio waves could play havoc with their sophisticated quantum communication networks. As alarms blared across the alien fleet and their perfect formation began to crumble, Hayes allowed herself a moment of satisfaction. Humanity had prepared for this moment not by trying to match the aliens' technological advancement, but by perfecting the art of asymmetric warfare. Tactical Officer James "Ghost" Walker studied the holographic battle display with narrowed eyes. After 3 hours of combat, the Zix's theory had finally adapted to both their kinetic weapons and Thompson's improvised crystal breaker. But in doing so, they'd revealed something far more valuable than any tactical advantage. "Captain," Walker called out, his fingers tracing patterns in the air as he manipulated the tactical display. "I think I've found their weakness. Look at their recovery formation." Hayes moved to his station, watching as he highlighted the geometric patterns of the alien fleet's movements. "They're rebuilding their standard attack formation," she observed. "Exactly," Walker nodded. "Even after everything we've thrown at them, they're falling back on pre-programmed responses. Their entire command structure is based on maintaining perfect geometric formations for their quantum targeting systems." Rodriguez leaned over from his station. "We've already proven we can break those formations." "But we've been doing it wrong," Walker countered. "We've been trying to destroy their ships when we should be forcing them to make decisions their hierarchy can't handle." Hayes raised an eyebrow. "Explain." Walker's fingers danced across his console, bringing up analysis of their previous engagements. "The Zix's theory never deviate from their formations, even when it's tactically advantageous to do so. I don't think it's just doctrine. I think they physically can't. Their quantum targeting systems require precise geometric alignment to function." "So what are you suggesting?" Hayes asked, though her slight smile suggested she was already following his logic. "Something they'll never expect," Walker replied, pulling up a damage assessment of the Hyperion. "We're going to use our own damage sections as bait. If we vent plasma from our starboard nacelles here and here, it'll look like we're critically wounded." Thompson's voice crackled over the comm. "You want to deliberately damage our ship?" "I like the way you think, Walker, but those nacelles are barely holding together as it is." "That's what makes it perfect," Walker insisted. "The damage is real enough to fool their sensors, but we can control exactly how it affects us. Their tactical computers will calculate that we're crippled and adjust their formation to deliver a killing blow." Hayes studied the projected enemy movement patterns, and when they shift formation to attack, they'll create a gap in their geometric alignment, Walker finished, one that will force individual ships to choose between maintaining formation and pressing the attack. The moment one ship breaks geometry, their entire targeting network becomes compromised, and their commanders will have to make individual decisions. Hayes nodded slowly. Decisions their hierarchy never trained them for. The bridge fell silent as the implications sank in. They weren't just planning to damage the enemy fleet. They were going to force a cultural crisis in the middle of a battle. "Thompson," Hayes called out, "can you give us controlled plasma venting from those nacelles?" "Already working on it, Captain," the engineer replied. "I can route emergency plasma through the damaged sections. It'll look like we're bleeding out into space, but I can cut it off at any time." "Make it happen," Hayes ordered. "Mr. Walker, coordinate with Rodriguez on the targeting solutions. When they move to finish us off, I want every weapon we have left aimed at that geometric weak point." The next 10 minutes were a masterclass in controlled chaos. The Hyperion listed to starboard, venting plasma in a spectacular display of apparent vulnerability. The Zix's fleet, sensing weakness, began their precise maneuver to deliver the killing blow. "They're taking the bait," Rodriguez reported, watching his tactical display. "Fleet movement exactly as predicted. These guys really don't know how to deviate from their playbook." Walker's hands tensed over his console. "Wait for it. Their formation is stretching. 3 ships are approaching optimal attack position, but maintaining geometry will require them to slow their approach." Hayes leaned forward in her chair. "Now we see if they can adapt. Mr. Rodriguez, all weapons ready. The moment their formation breaks, I want everything we have targeting that gap. Let's give them a choice between doctrine and survival. Communications Officer Lisa Echo Martins watched as the Zixextheri fleet faced their moment of truth. 3 of their crystalline warships hovered at the edge of their perfect formation, caught between protocol and opportunity. The Hyperion's apparent vulnerability proved too tempting. The lead ship broke formation, accelerating toward their wounded prey. Contact 1 has broken geometric alignment, Martins reported, her fingers flying across her communications array. Their quantum network is showing signs of strain. Beginning electronic warfare broadcast now. She'd spent months studying the Zixtheri's quantum communication protocols, finding patterns in what seemed like random noise. Now she put that knowledge to use, injecting carefully crafted data packets into their destabilized network. Broadcasting false tactical updates, she announced, making it look like their command structure is ordering a complete reformation of their battle line. The effect was immediate and devastating. Some ships attempted to follow the false orders, while others maintained their original positions. The perfect crystalline formation that had made the Zixtheri fleet so formidable began to dissolve into chaos. Multiple ships showing command confusion. Rodriguez called out from tactical. They're requesting verification through secondary channels. Should we jam those too? Negative, Martins responded with a predatory smile. Let them talk. The more they communicate, the more confusion we can create, initiating phase 2 of the deception. She began broadcasting conflicting orders on different frequencies, each perfectly mimicking the Zixtheri command protocols. Years of signals intelligence had revealed that their rigid hierarchy never prepared them for contradictory orders. They had no protocols for resolving such conflicts. Captain, she reported, I'm picking up something interesting. Some of the younger ship commanders are beginning to question their orders directly. They're actually arguing with their superiors. Hayes nodded grimly. The first crack in any rigid system is doubt. Once they start questioning one order, they'll question them all. Mr. Rodriguez, status of our Rigelian allies. The Rigelian Defense Fleet is responding exactly as we hoped, he replied. They're taking advantage of the confusion, using our tactics. Their ships are targeting the gaps in the Zixtheri formation. Not bad for a species that was on the defensive just hours ago. Thompson's voice crackled over the comm. Engineering to bridge. Whatever you're doing up there is working. I'm seeing power fluctuations throughout their fleet. Their quantum coordination systems are trying to compensate for the formation breaks, but they're burning through energy reserves like crazy. Walker added his own observation. The Zixtheri flagship is attempting to restore order, but their transmissions are becoming increasingly desperate. They've never faced an enemy that could turn their own command structure against them. Martinez continued her electronic assault, each transmission precisely calculated to cause maximum disruption. The Zixtheri communications network, designed for perfect clarity and absolute authority, was drowning in a sea of contradictory commands and false data. New development, she announced suddenly. 3 enemy vessels have completely severed their quantum links with the command network. They're operating independently, using old-fashioned radio communications, and they're actually performing better than the ships still tied to the network. Hayes leaned forward in her command chair. Those would be the adaptable ones. The ones who understand that survival sometimes means breaking the rules. Mark those ships in our tactical display. They'll either be our biggest threats or our first potential allies when this is over. The bridge crew watched as the mighty Zixtheri fleet continued to fragment. Ships that had never operated outside their rigid command structure were forced to make decisions on their own, with wildly varying results. Some froze in space, waiting for clear orders that would never come. Others lashed out randomly, their weapons fire more dangerous to their allies than their enemies. Incoming transmission, Martins reported, surprise evident in her voice. One of the independent ships is broadcasting on an open frequency. They're requesting a temporary ceasefire to reassess tactical doctrine. Their commander says, and I quote, "The humans have proven that our current combat protocols are fundamentally flawed." Hayes allowed herself a small smile. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you win a battle without destroying your enemy. Sometimes the best victory isn't defeating their ships, it's changing their minds. Commander Krithax of the Zixextheri vessel Crystal Ascendant watched his quantum display dissolve into chaos. The humans' latest attack wasn't just disrupting their communications, it was forcing his people to confront uncomfortable truths about their entire society. Through the crystalline viewport of his bridge, he observed as another ship in the fleet attempted to maintain the sacred geometric formations, only to be picked apart by precise human attacks. The old ways were failing them, yet most of his fellow commanders couldn't, or wouldn't, adapt. "Status report," he demanded, noting how his bridge crew straightened with pride rather than fear. He had spent the last few hours encouraging them to think independently, breaking centuries of rigid protocol. "Our quantum links with the command network are fully severed," his communications officer reported. "We're operating on autonomous systems only. Efficiency has increased by 47%. Krithax nodded, a very human gesture he'd adopted during the battle. "And the rest of the fleet?" 17 vessels have now broken from the hierarchy," his tactical officer responded. "They're forming impromptu battle groups based on the human model. The High Command is displeased." Meanwhile, aboard the Hyperion, Martine has monitored the evolving situation with intense focus. "Captain, you need to see this. The independent Zixtheri ships are developing their own combat doctrine in real time. They're combining their quantum technology with human tactical principles." Hayes studied the tactical display. "Mr. Walker, analysis." "It's remarkable," Walker replied, watching the movement patterns of Krithax's group. "They're using their quantum shields in ways their own doctrine forbade. Instead of maintaining rigid formations, they're creating dynamic, shifting defense screens. It's like they're learning to improvise." Thompson's voice crackled over the comm. "Engineering to bridge. These adaptable ships are doing something fascinating with their crystal matrices. They're purposely introducing controlled imperfections, making them less perfect but more flexible. It's brilliant." Back on the Crystal Ascendant, Krithax made a decision that would reshape Zixtheri society forever. "Open a channel to all independent vessels," he ordered, "and broadcast on frequencies the humans can monitor." "My fellow commanders," he began, his crystalline voice resonating with conviction. "For millennia, we have equated perfection with strength. Today, the humans have taught us that true strength lies in imperfection, in the ability to adapt, to think independently, to evolve." As he spoke, more ships began breaking away from the main fleet's formation. The younger commanders, those who had secretly questioned the rigid hierarchy, found their courage in his words. "Look at how they fight," Krithax continued. "Not with perfect formations or flawless execution, but with creativity, with emotion, with individual initiative. They have shown us that the flaw in our crystal matrix is not imperfection, it is the inability to embrace change." Martinez turned to Hayes, her eyes wide. "Captain, the quantum network is transforming. The independent ships aren't just breaking away. They're creating a new kind of command structure. It's collaborative, democratic even. The next generation making itself heard," Hayes mused. "Thompson, are you getting readings on this?" "Fascinating stuff, Captain," the engineer replied. "Their quantum crystals are actually reorganizing at the molecular level. The rigid crystalline structure is becoming more organic, more adaptable. They're literally evolving their technology to match their changing philosophy." Krithax's voice continued to ring across space. "The High Command calls this heresy. I call it evolution. Look at what we've achieved in mere hours of independent thought. Imagine what we could become if we embraced this change, this beautiful imperfection." Walker's tactical display lit up with new patterns. The transformed ships are moving to protect the Rigelian colonies. They're not just refusing to attack. They're actively defending their former targets. Hayes allowed herself a small smile. "And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how you win a war without destroying your enemy. You help them destroy the chains that bind them. Incoming transmission from the Crystal Ascendant, Martins announced. Commander Krithax is requesting permission to open formal diplomatic channels. He says they have much to learn from humanity's beautiful imperfection. The neutral station Rigel 7 hung in space like a jewel between the assembled fleets. Inside its main conference chamber, Captain Jennifer Hayes sat across from Commander Krithax, their respective crews positioned behind them. The crystalline architecture of the station reflected rainbow patterns across the gathering, a fitting symbol for the merging of their civilization's approaches. The High Command has officially withdrawn from Rigelian space, Krithax announced, his crystalline features catching the light. Though I suspect their retreat has less to do with military concerns and more to do with containing what they call the human contamination. Hayes raised an eyebrow. Contamination. That's an interesting way to describe evolution. They fear change, Krithax responded, gesturing to his own crew. Look at us. In mere days, we have transformed more than in the previous 1,000 years. My crew now debates orders, suggests improvements, thinks independently. To the old guard, this is chaos. To us, it is freedom. Thompson, who had insisted on attending despite engineering's demands, studied the modified quantum crystals that now adorned Krithax's ship interfaces. You've completely redesigned your crystal matrices. The new structure allows for adaptation without sacrificing strength, organic patterns within crystalline frameworks. Your influence, Krithax acknowledged. We learned that perfection without flexibility is merely stagnation. Already, our younger scientists are exploring technologies that blend our quantum mastery with human innovation. Martina had stepped forward, holding a data crystal containing Sarah Reynolds' complete research. Sarah would have loved to see this, she said, her voice steady. Her theories about your communication patterns weren't just about winning battles. They were about understanding your people. Krithax received the crystal with surprising gentleness. Her sacrifice will be remembered. Perhaps the first joint human Zix Theory Research Institute should bear her name. The Reynolds Institute for Quantum Innovation, Hayes mused. She would have hated all the attention, but she would have loved the work. Walker, who had been quietly analyzing security feeds, spoke up. We're already seeing changes spreading through the younger generation of your fleet. The rigid hierarchy is giving way to something new, a meritocracy based on innovation and adaptability. Change comes with a price, Krithax noted, his crystalline features shifting in what they now recognize as concern. Many of our traditionalists are calling for my execution as a traitor. They don't understand that standing still in an evolving universe is the real betrayal. You'll have Earth's support, Hayes assured him. Your independent fleet has already proven itself as allies by defending Rigelian colonies. I suspect this is just the beginning of a much larger transformation. Rodriguez, who had been uncharacteristically quiet, finally spoke. The real victory here isn't military. We didn't just win a battle. We sparked a revolution in how an entire civilization thinks about itself. And perhaps, Krithax added, you have helped us remember something our pursuit of perfection made us forget. True strength lies not in unwavering rigidity, but in the ability to bend without breaking, to change without losing one's core essence. Hayes stood, prompting everyone in the chamber to follow suit. Then let this be the first of many exchanges. Earth stands ready to assist your transition. Commander Krithax, or should I say, Ambassador Krithax. The crystalline commander's features shifted in what they now recognized as a smile. The first Zix Theory ambassador to Earth. The High Command would have considered it a punishment. I consider it an honor. As the gathering dispersed, Hayes took a final look around the chamber. Her crew had performed magnificently, but the cost had been high. Yet from those losses had come something unprecedented. The birth of a new civilization, one that merged the best aspects of both species. Captain, Martinez called softly. Message from Earth Command. They're asking for a full report on the tactical, diplomatic, and cultural implications of this encounter. Hayes smiled. Tell them it's quite simple, really. We came here to stop an invasion and ended up helping a civilization free itself. Just another day at the Office for Humanity Among the Stars. Chief Engineer Ashley Spark Thompson cursed under her breath as another impact rattled the Hyperion. The Zixatheri had finally managed to reconfigure their quantum shields into a crystalline matrix dense enough to deflect railgun rounds. Their main weapons were now about as effective as throwing pebbles at a battleship. "Engineering to bridge," she called out, her hands flying across multiple control panels. "Captain, those fancy new shields of theirs are creating quantum resonance patterns. They're not just blocking our shots, they're learning from each impact." "Time to improvise, Chief," Hayes responded, her voice steady despite the situation. "Show me why they call you Spark at the Academy." Thompson grinned, already 3 steps ahead in her calculations. "Remember that mining laser we installed for asteroid excavation? I've got an idea that would make my old physics professor have a heart attack." "Your ideas usually do," Hayes replied. "What do you need?" 5 minutes and permission to redirect power from non-essential systems. Oh, and tell Rodriguez to keep them busy. This modification isn't exactly in the manual." The bridge crew listened as Thompson barked orders to her engineering team. The woman had a reputation for turning theoretical physics into practical solutions that bordered on the impossible. During the Mars crisis, she'd once powered a stranded colony by turning their waste processing plant into a makeshift fusion reactor. "Engineering team, gather round," Thompson addressed her crew. "We're going to take that mining laser and turn it into something nasty. Peters, start reconfiguring the focal array. Martinez, I need you to strip the cooling systems from survival pods 3 through 7. We're going to need that coolant." Her team moved with practiced efficiency, understanding that their chief's crazy ideas had saved their lives more than once. As they worked, Thompson explained her plan. "The Zixatheri shields work by creating a quantum crystalline matrix, right? Well, our mining laser operates on a simple principle. It excites molecular bonds to break down rock. But if we reverse the frequency modulation and channel it through the coolant from our survival pods, the laser will enhance molecular bonds instead of breaking them." Peters finished, eyes widening. "Their shields will try to grow crystals faster than they can maintain coherence." "Exactly," Thompson grinned. "Like forcing a plant to grow so fast it tears itself apart. Not exactly Geneva Convention approved, but I don't think those rules apply to quantum crystal aliens." Another impact rocked the ship. "Bridge to engineering." Hayes's voice crackled through the comm. "Whatever you're planning, we could use it soon. They're coordinating their fire patterns now." "Almost there, Captain," Thompson replied, making final adjustments. "Rerouting power now. Rodriguez, I'm sending you targeting coordinates. When I give the signal, hit these exact points with whatever railgun rounds we have left." The modified mining laser hummed to life, its energy signature barely registering on conventional sensors. Thompson had reconfigured it to operate on frequencies the Zixatheri considered too primitive to monitor. "Fire in the hole," Thompson announced, activating the system. The beam lanced out, invisible to the naked eye, but striking the nearest Zixatheri cruiser's shields. At first, nothing seemed to happen. Then, like ice crystals growing in fast forward, the quantum shields began to expand uncontrollably. "Rodriguez, now," Thompson shouted. The railguns fired, their rounds striking the oversaturated shield matrix. Instead of deflecting, the shields shattered catastrophically, the crystalline structure growing and breaking in a cascade of quantum feedback. "Holy shit," Rodriguez breathed, watching his tactical display. "Their entire shield network is going down. The quantum resonance is spreading from ship to ship through their command links." Thompson allowed herself a moment of satisfaction before turning back to her work. "Captain, we've got maybe 20 minutes before they figure out how to compensate. Permission to start working on our next surprise." "Granted," Hayes replied, and Thompson could hear the smile in her voice. "Remind me to never play poker with you, Chief." You always seem to have another card up your sleeve. The difference between humans and the Zix theory, Captain, Thompson responded, already sketching out her next modification, is that they think technology has rules that can't be broken. We see rules as more like guidelines for creative interpretation. The ceasefire negotiation was interrupted by a blinding flash of light. A Zix theory dreadnought, one still rigidly following its original orders, had taken advantage of the momentary distraction to launch a devastating strike at the Hyperion's port side. Direct hit on decks 4 through 7. Rodriguez shouted over the blare of emergency sirens. Hull breach in Section 12. Multiple casualties reported. Lisa Martinez felt her heart stop as damage reports flooded her console. Section 12. That's where Sarah was stationed. Senior Communications Specialist Sarah Reynolds, her mentor since the academy, the woman who taught her everything she knew about quantum signals analysis. Medical team to Section 12, Hayes ordered, her voice cutting through the chaos. Thompson, status of emergency containment. Force fields are holding, but we've lost primary power to that entire section, Thompson reported. Switching to backup systems now. Martinez's fingers trembled over her console as she maintained the electronic warfare broadcasts. The mission had to continue, but her eyes kept darting to the casualty reports scrolling across her screen. Finally, she saw it, the name she'd been dreading. Senior Communications Specialist Sarah Reynolds, status. Deceased. The bridge fell silent for a moment, everyone aware of what Martinez had just lost. They'd all known Sarah, had all benefited from her brilliance and kindness at some point. Lisa, Hayes said softly, using her first name for the first time in the battle. I need to know if you can continue. Martinez took a deep breath, her hand steadying over her controls. When she spoke, her voice was ice. Oh, I can continue, Captain. In fact, I think it's time we showed the Zix theory exactly what happens when they make this personal. She began typing with renewed intensity, her grief transforming into razor-sharp focus. The electronic warfare patterns she now fed into the enemy network were different, more subtle, more insidious. She wasn't just trying to confuse them anymore. She was going to tear their command structure apart. Martinez, what are you doing? Walker asked, noticing the change in signal patterns. Sarah spent 3 years studying Zix theory psychology through their communication patterns. Martinez replied, not looking up from her work. She had theories about their hierarchical weaknesses that command thought were too aggressive to implement. Well, now we're going to test every single one of them. The effects of her new attack patterns became evident within minutes. The Zix theory fleet's communication network began to show signs of complete psychological breakdown. Ships weren't just questioning orders now. They were questioning the entire foundation of their military structure. Multiple enemy vessels powering down weapons, Rodriguez reported. Their crews are refusing orders from their command ships. This is unprecedented. Thompson's voice came over the comm. Whatever you're doing up there, it's working. Their quantum network is eating itself alive. The psychological feedback is causing cascade failures in their command and control systems. Hayes watched as Martinez continued her work, understanding that this was about more than just winning the battle now. This was about honoring Sarah's legacy by proving her theories correct. Captain, Martinez called out, her voice steady despite the tears in her eyes. I'm picking up something interesting. The independent ships we marked earlier, they're broadcasting to their fleet using Sarah's theoretical protocols. They're not just adapting our tactics, they're completely restructuring their command approach. Sarah would be proud, Hayes said softly. She always said the best way to defeat an enemy was to help them defeat themselves. The bridge crew worked in focused silence, each member channeling their grief for their lost comrades into precise, devastating action. The Zix theory had made a critical mistake. They had assumed that causing human casualties would weaken their resolve. Instead, they had learned another harsh lesson about humanity. Sometimes loss only makes them more dangerous. New targeting solutions ready, Rodriguez announced. These ones are based on Sarah's psychological warfare protocols. Should I implement? Do it, Hayes ordered. Let's make sure the Zixtheri never forget the lesson they learned here today. Sometimes the most dangerous enemy isn't the one with the most advanced technology. It's the one with something to fight for. Lieutenant Commander Mike Maverick Rodriguez watched his tactical display with intense focus as the first salvo of railgun rounds tore through the Zixtheri fleet. The alien vessel's crystalline hulls shattered like expensive chandeliers, fragments spinning out into the void. But he knew better than to celebrate too early. The Zixtheri hadn't conquered half the Orion arm by being slow learners. Multiple signatures powering up, he reported, his fingers already calculating new firing solutions. They're adapting their shield geometries. Looks like they're trying to create some kind of crystalline lattice to deflect kinetic impacts. Captain Hayes leaned forward in her command chair. Just as we expected. Time to show them our next trick. Miss Thompson, initiate Protocol Ghostwalker. Down in engineering, Chief Engineer Ashley Thompson's team scrambled to reconfigure their electronic warfare systems. The Hyperion's outer hull began emitting a complex pattern of electromagnetic pulses designed to play havoc with the alien's quantum-based sensors. EGLU suite active, Thompson reported. Their targeting systems should be getting real interesting readings right about now. She wasn't wrong. Across the Zixtheri fleet, sensor operators stared in confusion as their quantum arrays showed multiple phantom images of the Hyperion, each giving off contradictory energy signatures. The alien's sophisticated targeting computers, designed to track ships through quantum probability states, were being fooled by artificially generated electromagnetic noise, technology they had dismissed as obsolete centuries ago. Target their command and control nodes, Hayes ordered. Let's see how well their perfect formation holds when they can't coordinate. Rodriguez grinned as he input the targeting parameters. Firing solution ready. You know, Captain, my grandfather used to say sometimes the best way to win a fistfight is to throw sand in your opponent's eyes first. Your grandfather sounds like he would have made a fine tactical officer, Hayes replied with a slight smile. Execute firing pattern Delta. The Hyperion's railgun spoke again, but this time they launched a different payload. Instead of solid tungsten rods, these rounds contained clusters of specially designed electronic warfare drones. As they detonated near the alien vessels, they released clouds of metallic chaff along with powerful electromagnetic pulses. The effect was immediate and devastating. The Zixtheri's quantum communication networks, which relied on precisely maintained quantum states, began to collapse under the barrage of primitive interference. Ships that had never been designed to operate independently suddenly found themselves cut off from their command structure. Enemy fleet showing signs of disarray, Martins reported from her communication station. Their coordination is breaking down. Individual ships are beginning to act autonomously, and they're not doing it well. Hayes nodded grimly. Now we see the weakness of over-reliance on technology. Their ships have all the power in the galaxy, but their crews have never had to think for themselves. The bridge crew watched as the mighty Zixtheri fleet began to fragment. Some ships maintained their position, waiting for orders that couldn't get through. Others tried to adapt, but their responses were clumsy and uncoordinated. Millions of years of evolution had taught humans to be adaptable. The Zixtheri were learning this lesson the hard way. Multiple ships charging weapons, Rodriguez warned. They're switching to basic visual targeting, not as accurate, but they can still hit us if we're not careful. Evasive pattern Echo 3, Hayes commanded. Keep our velocity unpredictable. Mr. Rodriguez, target any ship that looks like it's starting to figure things out. We can't let them adapt too quickly. The Hyperion danced through space, its movements seemingly random but carefully calculated to maximize the confusion of their electronic warfare. Each time, a Zixtheri ship began to show signs of effective independent action. Precisely targeted railgun fire would force them back into defensive maneuvers. Captain, Thompson's voice came over the comm. I'm seeing some interesting patterns in their shield modifications. They're trying to create a new type of defensive screen, one that might actually work against our kinetic weapons. We've got maybe 10 minutes before they adapt." Hayes straightened in her chair. "Then we have 9 minutes to implement our next surprise. Begin preparations for Phase 3. Let's show them that humanity's greatest weapon isn't our technology. It's our ability to change tactics faster than they can adapt to them."